that this is not an attack channel. This is not a let's go out and hate women channel. That's not what I want for this channel.
Do you really expect me to believe that? I'm sorry that I have a hard time feeling like you are not an attack channel, as you are shaming and calling anti-MGTOWs in general as people who are psychotic, dangerous, and haters in your video. If this is not supposed to be an attack channel, what is the purpose of launching an attack against all of Anti-MGTOW? Good morrow, ladies and gents. It is I, the Crimson Crusader, your favorite anti-MGTOW YouTuber, fighting against the MGTOW propaganda machine that I suspect are using other men as pawns to launch their little demonization campaigns against anti-MGTOW. Welcome back to another video responding to MAGA Man's video about the anti-MGTOW community. If you haven't seen my previous video on this, go watch that first before you watch this video. Link will be in the description. Anyways, as I stated in the previous response video to his video, I'll be responding to certain clips and paraphrasing some of his arguments. When I bring up statistics and make claims, these claims are relevant to the United States and are not intended to be making an argument about the state of things in all Western countries, as I have not yet researched the statistics in other countries. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get right into the video.
Why, you anti-MGTOWs out there feel this fucking obsessive compulsive need to fix us? We don't need your help. We don't want your help, and we didn't ask for your help.
Maybe you wouldn't have to ask these questions if you weren't strawmanning us. Anti-MGTOW in general doesn't have an obsessive need to fix you and make you some sort of Chad or whatever. I'm not trying to arrogantly and ignorantly save you. Anti-MGTOW content creators, myself included, and most of the anti-MGTOWs I've talked to, are not here to make you an exact clone of us or however you want to define fixing someone. So enough with this rubbish. Not all anti-MGTOWs are the same, and I am truly disappointed in how you continue to make these sweeping generalizations without showing any evidence or using good examples in this video to back it up. As I said, and I will continue to say this, the mission of many anti-MGTOWs, including myself, is to expose the nonsense and lies perpetuated by MGTOW and fight to diminish its growth. That's it. I think we've already established this in the last video, that trying to convince MGTOW to live a certain way or become a certain type of person, in many cases, if not most cases, is a waste of time. The best I can do is prevent and convince others who are not MGTOW from falling for their garbage. Also, I don't care if you don't need, want, or ask for my help, because this is not about your personal life. It's about the misinformation and rubbish that MGTOW is trying to spread on the internet. Once you start to talk about issues in the public interest, such as divorce and marriage, it's only fair that people in the public, like myself, get to contribute to the conversation and help others see the truth. Whether you want to accept the truth or not is up to you, but you are not going to shame me with this pathetic tirade of yours. You know what's really obsessive and compulsive? Why is there a significant portion of MGTOWs who have this obsessive and compulsive need to go woman bashing? I'm talking about the MGTOW who say stuff like this. Every day, MGTOW seems to become more and more like CNN. You know, for CNN, it doesn't matter what Trump says or what Trump does. Trump can cure cancer and say the sky is blue, and CNN will still try to disagree and attack him at all costs. MGTOW is starting to become more like CNN, in that it's obsessed with playing the victim and blaming other people for their problems, rather than actually doing anything to solve them. Just like how CNN almost always gives you negative coverage of Trump, MGTOW is constantly, almost if not always, talking about the bad things women do or how bad women are. Most of the time we just hear the negative side of women, and rarely do we hear anything good. And this creates a narrative that breeds an atmosphere of animosity towards women. I am so sick of it. Yet these people keep doing it, just like how conservatives like yourself are sick of CNN. And you see this on these big MGTOW YouTube channels. We need to hear both sides of women, the good and the bad. But MGTOW typically only present us with their narrative, oh, look what she did, oh, did you see what she did? For a community that complains an awful lot about the court system, they fail to recognize an important aspect emphasized in the justice system, the important principle that both sides of the story are fairly represented in the court case. But in this case, we only get this negative and sometimes borderline misogynistic hate campaign against women by many of these MGTOW. If MGTOW wants to sit around and do nothing, they can do that. But I won't stand for such petty, disingenuous trash coming out of the mouths of many of these MGTOWs. Then, MAGA Man discusses for a little while about the struggles that he claims to be facing in the court systems, specifically the family courts. I sympathize with people who struggle with divorce. It's not an easy thing. However, I am going to skip this part not because it's unimportant, but because the purpose of this video is to focus more on MAGA Man's comments regarding anti-MGTOW and m.g.t.o.w. Anyways, let's continue.
But the fucking family court system is bankrupt and rigged against men, period. That's the way it is. Nobody wants to talk about male suicide. I've talked about my trials and tribulations on this channel. Where are these anti-MGTOWs to offer advice? Good, sound, clean advice to men out there when they're going through certain issues like myself.
Oh, I thought you didn't want our help. Actually, anti-MGTOWs have already been having some of these discussions with other anti-MGTOW and even MGTOW about male suicide. In fact, in one of my videos, I actually discussed this in a response video to another MGTOW YouTuber. I agree with you that this is a serious problem, and I would support finding effective solutions to address the issue of male suicide. But before this can be accomplished, I think we need to do more research so that we understand this complex issue well enough to provide adequate solutions. But let me ask you this. What solutions or efforts have many of these MGTOW been making to actually solve these issues? How does MGTOW help when many in the community have this defeatist attitude of believing that focusing on activism and pursuing reform is a waste of time? In fact, I would argue this makes men even more depressed, and it makes this situation seem hopeless when it's not. I have to wonder if some of these MGTOWs are just lazy, selfish, or simply brainwashed by others into believing this nonsense. As I've stated before, I may disagree with the men's rights activists about how widespread and serious some of these supposed problems are, but I respect how some of them are trying to be productive and find solutions. But when it comes to giving men advice about things, I would always recommend one thing. If you are struggling with some serious issue, please seek professional help. Don't waste your time listening to some of these MGTOW guys who rant like lunatics, and actually make the time to talk to professionals who are knowledgeable and educated and get the help you need. But it doesn't matter what advice I give, because while MAGA Man might be considerate of other people's input, I know that many of these MGTOW will find some way to make it seem like my advice isn't good enough because it either wouldn't fit their narrative or simply because I am anti-MGTOW. Uh-oh. Speaking of talking about the issues, I'd like to discuss my opinion on the debate over whether the family court system in America has serious and widespread corruption on a nationwide scale. This is a topic that you brought up in this video of yours. I definitely agree that there may be some corruption in the family court system, as corruption to some level will always be present in government. However, I disagree that this is an issue that is occurring in all or most court systems in the United States. Unfortunately, MGTOW and others who make these claims will in many cases use anecdotal evidence and misinterpret the statistics. For example, many MGTOW and other sources will mention how around 90% of the time women get custody of the children. From there, they assert that there is gender bias against men because there is this great disparity. Then, I commonly see many MGTOW conclude that in most cases, if a man gets divorced, the court will rob the man of having the opportunity to see his children. On the surface, this may seem like a rational argument. Ironically, MGTOW, a movement that is typically anti-feminist, is using feminist logic. Just because a disparity exists does not mean that you are oppressed or that sexism is the main cause. This is the same kind of rubbish that feminists try to use to argue that women are paid less than men because of gender bias, when in reality there were other factors to explain why women are paid less. Yes, it's true that in the majority of cases women get custody of the kids, but here's what MGTOW don't tell you. They fail to tell us why the statistics are the way they are, and instead opt to assume that the cause is gender bias rather than actually proving it. Many of these people haven't even taken into account other reasons why fathers are less likely to receive custody. MGTOW fail to mention how domestic abuse, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and other factors lower a man's chance of having custody of the children. Because men are more likely to engage in these many things, it should be no surprise to see how more women than men are getting custody of the children. According to American Addiction Centers, it says, quote, men may be more likely to abuse illicit drugs than women, but women may be just as prone to addiction as men when they do abuse them. In addition, 9.4% of men aged 12 and older, compared to 5.2% of women aged 12 and older, according to the study, had a substance addiction problem. So as we can see here, men are almost twice as likely more than women to have substance addiction issues. Let's take a look at alcohol abuse. According to a study in 2012 by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, it states that over 10% of children in the United States live with a parent that has alcohol problems. Furthermore, when we compare the percentage of abuse of alcohol between males and females age 18 and older, we see that 9.2 million men, compared to 5.3 million women, had an alcohol use disorder. So, it's clear that from these statistics that men are more likely to abuse alcohol, and that alcohol abuse is not as rare in families as some people might think. Another important factor to take into consideration is domestic violence. When it comes to the issue of domestic violence, 1 in 4 women compared to 1 in 9 men, and I quote, experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, post-traumatic stress disorder, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases, etc. Also, according to the source, which you are free to take a look at in the description, it says, quote, 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. Furthermore, it states how, and I quote, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. Women are not always the victims, and yes, men can be victims too, but men are more likely to commit such acts and cause serious harm compared to women who are, in general, physically weaker than men if we look at this from a biological standpoint. Now, before some of you get angry and jump to conclusions, I am not trying to say everything is the man's fault, but these statistics suggest that men are at a higher risk of having these problems I just mentioned. I think anyone with common sense would understand that these issues would likely be an important factor to consider by the court in a custody case. Because men are more likely to have these issues, these factors contribute to the disparity in child custody cases we see between men and women. To be clear, I am not saying these are the only factors, but it outright debunks the idea that gender bias is the only cause of the disparity we are witnessing, and it seriously calls into question the over-exaggerated role these m.g.t.o.w and others who attribute gender bias to why a man is unable to see his kids. To further make my case, how can they say that most of the time men are being robbed from seeing their children by a judge when in 51% of child custody cases both parties agree to choose the mother as the custodial parent? In 29% of these child custody cases, there is no need for a court or a third party like a mediator. In addition, in 91% of all child custody cases, the involvement of the court is not even required. By looking at the statistics, we can see how the reality of the situation conflicts with the assertion that in most cases of child custody during a divorce, the outcome is the man being forced into a situation where the court will unfairly take the kids away from him. So as we can see here, folks, the idea that in general, when you divorce, you are more likely going to end up having the court rob you from seeing your kids is more of exaggerations and paranoia. That is why I think m.g.t.o.w's current assessment of the court system is frankly out of touch with what's really going on. To debunk all the insane claims many of these m.g.t.o.ws are making, as well as other groups, is a whole other video topic, but this should give you an idea of some of the arguments coming from the other side on this issue. Anyways, I am not saying that corruption does not exist, nor am I saying that gender bias doesn't exist on some level. However, it seems the arguments claiming it's a fact that the entire court system is in general rigged against men mainly because of gender bias has not been proven to be true. Based on my research, so far gender bias may be a factor, but its significance and impact is still up for debate. It's clear that the reasons why we see these disparities are more complex than the oversimplified analysis that you would get from m.g.t.o.ws and radical feminists. How can these m.g.t.o.w expect me to believe such a weak argument? You like the facts, MAGA? There you go, I gave them to you. Not only that, I have a bunch of links to these statistics and articles in the description of this video. I invite you to read them for yourself. But what really saddens me is how these m.g.t.o.ws act so hostile and rude to people like myself who are trying to better understand and research into the situation. You would think that m.g.t.o.w would be reasonable and invite people to ask questions and do research. Isn't that what scientists do all the time? But you know what's just as pathetic as these weak arguments? The weakness in certain parts of the anti-MGTOW community, and we all know who I'm referring to, as I am doing videos defending our community, doing actual research, and making thoughtful responses to these concerns. We have some of these anti-MGTOWs who contribute little to nothing of significant value to the conversation, and some of these people don't even bother to focus on issues that matter, or even use statistics. Yet these same people are delusional in thinking they are somehow these great, influential people, when people like me are actually taking the time to make quality videos instead of being lazy. I have to ask the people who still associate with those people, why do you tolerate such low quality content? Well folks, I hope you found this video informative and that it gave you a different perspective on these issues. I know these videos are longer than usual, but I want to take the time to respond carefully and thoughtfully. MAGA Man, we may disagree, but I 100% support men like you who believe that there must be justice for men in the justice system. I look forward to your feedback and insight. I still have a lot more to say and respond to in MAGA Man's video, so it looks like I'm gonna have to make another video. Anyways, please like, subscribe, and follow me on BitChute and Twitter. Why do you think women get more custody of the children than men? Is the m.g.t.o.w community becoming more like CNN? Is there something I missed? Let me know in the comments below. My fair ladies and honorable gents, fare thee well.